Hey, good afternoon. This is Tom Waters, motivational speaker from Waters Speaks, and welcome to another edition of Let's Talk About It, my YouTube series where we talk about a variety of different topics that many of us are talking about anyway, that a lot of us are concerned about. So this is what we do. We talk about them. So this is the second episode. So thank you for joining me. I hope you find this episode very worthwhile. So let's get to it. Let's talk about it. So today I want to talk about something I'm sure you've all heard about, and that is the recent memorandum or decision that is made by the president of Tuskegee University. He has sent out something advising students that certain articles of clothing will no longer be acceptable or be able to be worn on college campuses in certain areas. These specified do-rags, he specified bonnets for women's hair, and some other things. Now, to be clear, first of all, he did not say on every area of the campus. So I want to make sure that we're clear about that. But he did say that in the classroom and other areas they deem inappropriate, they will no longer to be worn. And he has instructed his professors and teachers to address students who are not following this dress code. There's been some other things that he has addressed as well that we'll talk about, but I want to talk about this. First of all, let me say this. I'm not against totally what he's saying. I think that appropriate attire, I don't think that a bonnet is an appropriate attire for classroom. I don't think that do-rags are necessarily appropriate for every situation. I definitely don't think that pajama pants are definitely appropriate for classrooms. So I understand that. But here is where I have a concern. And this is why I want to talk about this today. Number one, let's be clear here. This information that you're given, or this directive that he is given, has been given on the basis of this stance that we are teaching our students and preparing them how to dress appropriately in corporate America. This is the basis. We're teaching them how to preparing them for how to look in the real world, and therefore dressing in do-rags and bonnets and other things are not appropriate. I get it. I understand to a point what you're saying, trying to prepare young people to go into the corporate world and dress appropriately. But where I'm concerned about is that, first of all, that we're making a broad assumption that just because a person dresses a certain way does not mean that they don't know how to dress appropriately when the time comes. I'm very concerned that the message is being sent to our young students, especially to our African American students, the assumption, because the way they dress going up and down the, when they're outside or in their buildings, means that they don't know how to dress appropriate in corporate or other situations. I think that's a stretch. I really do. I think that's a stretch, and I think he needs to be very careful when he says this. Number two, let's be mindful. A lot of students don't have a whole lot of money. They don't. A lot of students can't afford the fancy clothes. A lot of students do not have three-piece suits and dresses and all those type of things. Yes, I get it. I'll say this to you parents. When you're getting your children ready for college, especially the first year, make sure that your sons have a suit or a couple of suit jackets and a couple of pairs of dress pants and shirts and ties so they can interchange. I understand that. Same thing for ladies. Make sure they have dresses, or business suits and shoes, because sneakers are not shoes, ladies and gentlemen. I just want to say that sneakers are not shoes. But at the end of the day, let's not take this and saying that we're teaching our young people how to prepare to get ready for corporate America as this stands, and as this is what they're going to be judged on to help them to succeed in corporate America. Because I'm here to tell you it's not. It is not by any means. Take it from somebody who was in corporate America for 30 plus years, from somebody who was well educated, from somebody who knew how to dress appropriately, from somebody who was always dressed in a suit and a tie and shoes and all those things. For all those things that they said that we should do, that I did, but it did not stop me from experiencing discriminatory practices as a black man in corporate America. I found myself still having to fight twice as hard as other races. I found myself still having to deal with disparaging comments. I found myself still having to prove myself harder than my other counterparts. And mind you, I was dressed better than most of them. So let's not make this the basis that we're teaching them how to dress so they can be ready for corporate America, because ladies and gentlemen, doing all that does not mean they're not going to have to face the racism and the discrimination that happens in corporate America. Do I agree they should know how to dress appropriately? Yes, I do. But at the end of the day, I think there's a bigger thing that we need to be concerned about, or other things that we need to be concerned about when we're educating our young people, because at the end of the day, that old saying, clothes make the man, is not necessarily true right now, because there are a lot of intelligent black men and black women who have done successful and doing successful and great things, and they're not suited and booted every day. The culture has changed, the culture has changed in corporate America. Suits and ties are not necessarily the norm now in corporate America. I have nothing against a decent suit and tie. I have several in my closet. I wear them when I feel the need, when I'm at the right environment. I wear a proper suit and tie and dress shoes. I have no problem with that. But I don't want to be somebody to define me by the clothes that I have on without you getting a chance to know me. And we have done this for so long, and we have had to deal with this for so long because of our appearance. We're summed up based upon what we dress like, what we look like, but not about what we know and how we carry ourselves. So let's not put our young people in this category that now that we got to define, and we got to make sure that we teach them how to dress appropriately. Let's not go into the assumption because they're not dressing the way that we think is the way it should be happening, or the way that we did many years ago. Let's not assume that they don't know how. And let's not take away their right to dress freely, to express themselves, because in reality, ladies and gentlemen, this is probably going to be the last chance in their lives where they're going to have, for quite a few years, where they're going to have the ability to be free in their clothing, to express themselves in their clothing. Do you want to die on a flag because of a do-rag? Really? Do you want to do that? And let's be real here, ladies and gentlemen. When it comes to our young black men and our black women, let's understand the culture that surrounds our hair. Most of us as black men and most black women are very proud of our hair. And when our hair is not done right, we're not trying to show it. Plain and simple, right or wrong, we're not trying to show it. If a black man does not have a haircut, he is not trying to be out there with his hair not cut. He's either going to have a baseball cap, he's going to have on a do-rag or something. And mind you, most college students can't afford or don't have the opportunity to get their hair cut on a regular basis, especially when they're so far away from home. And, we talk about this, we have the thing about the dreads, the other institutions have things about our young black men, our young black women wearing dreads, but they're a part of the culture that our young people are growing up on now. So we're going to start discriminating against them based upon things that they're wearing to make themselves feel better. If a young black man has on a do-rag because his hair, he doesn't feel right because his hair is not cut, it is not a do or die, a live or die situation, ladies and gentlemen. I'm here to say it. Do you wear a do-rag when you go on an interview? No, you should not. Do you wear a do-rag in interviewing situations or in professional situations and meetings? You should not. I'm going to be the first to tell you. But at the end of the day, in everyday life, college students, these are college students, ladies and gentlemen, their experience of life, let them make some decisions on their own. We say that we're sending our children to college so they can learn and experience different things of the world and learn and how to get ready for the real world. If that's going to be the case, then let them make some decisions that they're comfortable with. Telling people how to dress and telling people what's appropriate and what's not appropriate, I have concerns. I do. And if we're going to do that, if you're going to make a mandate that says the students need to do this and dress this way and dress that way, I think there's a better way to address it. I think there's a better conversation that can be had to our students to help them better understand it. But it cannot be because we think that having them dressed this way is going to make it easier for them when they get onto the real world. Because I'm here to tell you that is not true. You may agree or disagree with me because I have experienced it. Being dressed in the way the corporate says we should be dressed, not a guarantee that you're going to be treated fairly in corporate America, especially if you're a minority student. It's just not a guarantee. Does it make a better appearance? Yes, it does. I'm not denying that. Going to an interview, you should have on a suit, or at least a suit jacket and a tie. You should. Shoes. I'm all for that. I think the best foot forward, I think that gives a good impression. But at the end of the day, doing that is no guarantee that they're going to look at you, because they're still going to look at you 9% of the time. They're supposed to be looking at your resume. They're supposed to be looking at your ability, not so much on what you wear. And again, corporate America has shifted now. And a lot of corporate America has gone into the business casual mode. They're not so concerned about you wearing suits and ties. They just want you to come and do the job. They want you to be appropriately dressed. And I'm going to give you another fact. A lot of churches have moved from the suited and booted to come as you are, come casual, come clean. Ladies and gentlemen, we have got to stop judging people by what they wear. We don't get a chance to know the person because we judge them because they got dreadlocks on, or because they got a bonnet on, or because they got a do-rag on, or they got on pajama pants. Yes, those things are not appropriate for every situation. I'm not knocking that. But once again, what are we telling our young people? What are we teaching them? That they can't have the freedom to express themselves? And he said, and I'm going to say it again from what I've read, this does not impact every area of the college campus. They're free to dress their way in their dorms, but is it a problem if a young man is sitting in a lab or sitting in the lunchroom with a do-rag on, or a young woman that has a scarf on her head and she's at lunch? Is it a problem? Is that really the issue the flag that you want to stand on? Seriously, is that the one? There are bigger things that we need to be teaching our young people right now. There are bigger issues that if we're going to prepare them for corporate America, and this is your stand because we want to prepare our students for corporate America, I get it, then there are some other things we need to be addressing outside of their clothing. Number one, are we teaching them proper communication skills? Because from what I have found, the generations that are coming up now do not have proper communication skills because they spend so much time texting, talking on social media. There's no actual interaction. So if you really want to prepare our young people for corporate America, where it really counts, let's start working on their interactionary skills, teaching them how to do public speaking, teaching them how a man to look another man in the eye, a proper handshake. Let's talk about how to have business conversations. That's what we need to be focused on, ladies and gentlemen. Those are the things that is going to really help them when they get out into the world. Clothing is only the first thing we see. But ladies and gentlemen, I've known a lot of people who have dressed very appropriately, but cannot talk well, or do not have the proper skills that they need. And this is from all races. This is just not black race. It's not just about the black race. So while I get what he's saying, and I understand what he's saying, and I agree in part with what he's saying, but is that the thing that we want to stand on? Number two, another thing he said that he's addressing is attendance. He wants to make sure that students are attending classes. So now it's almost as if he's going to have the teachers, the instructors, professors, or whoever taking attendance. Let me tell you something, ladies and gentlemen. If you are saying that college is supposed to prepare our young people for the real world and the situations they're going to face, then how are you going to make it start monitoring their attendance? Because ladies and gentlemen, there are consequences for not coming to class. You don't come to class, you don't get the material, you fail the class. Plain and simple. You run the risk of losing your scholarship if you don't do that. See, at some points, we're going to have to let our young people figure some things out for themselves. Mommy and daddy are no longer around there. So mommy is not going to call you up at 6 o'clock in the morning and tell you to get ready for your 8 o'clock class. Dad's definitely not going to do it. So if your students know they have an early morning class, it is their responsibility to make sure that they're up and in that class at 8 o'clock. It is not the professor's responsibility to monitor and tell people to make sure they get their class. Now, sure, if the students start missing too many classes, you can address it with them and say, hey, you're missing a lot of classes, you want to be careful. I get that. But monitoring attendance, ladies and gentlemen, college is not elementary school. College is not middle school. College is not high school where they monitor your attendance and then they report it back to your parents. It is up to the student. Let the students start taking some responsibility for the things that they're supposed to do. And if they're partying too hard and they can't get to class, then they're the ones that are going to have to learn that lesson. Whether we want to own up to it or not, ladies and gentlemen, and I get that we want to prepare our young people for as much as possible and teach them as much as possible and show them not to do the things that we didn't do, the things that we did wrong. In theory, that's great, but in reality, it's not going to happen. There are some mistakes that young people, students, are going to have to make. There are some things they're going to have to do that don't work out in their favor so they can learn the lesson. I learned the lesson of being on time at my job and not being late, not by anything that somebody said to me. It was by something that a manager said to me when I asked her for a promotion. And she says, Tom, you do great work. You'll do anything we want you to. If we need you to stay, you'll stay. But we never know what time you're going to get here. We never know what time you're going to get here. Because you're supposed to be here by 8:30. You come in at 9, 9:15, 8:35. You're late more often than not. Now, once you're here, that's good. But I can't promote you based upon that. And it was that shock to me, to my system, that consequence, that thing alone cost me a promotion. I learned from that lesson. And from that day on, I got to work on time every day. And I've made it my professional ability to get to work and school and all the other things that I did within life on time. I hate to be late. I honestly hate to be late, but that was a lesson that nobody could teach me. I had to learn the hard way. Thank God it wasn't a life or death situation. I still continued, I still had a job. I still was doing my job. I just started making sure that I was on time to do my job. And from that point on, every job that I went to after that, the lesson that I learned was be on time. And if anything, be a little early so you don't have to deal with it. Some of those lessons our students are going to have to learn on their own. So managing them and managing how often they're coming to class, no. I was in college in the 80s and 90s. Anybody managed my attendance? If I didn't come to class, I didn't come to class. But if I failed the class, that was on me. That was on me. In this respect, we can't handhold them. We have to let them make their decisions. See, we can't want to handhold them on one way and not on the other way. Okay, and now we're telling them these things are not appropriate for dress, all that kind of stuff. I get it all, but yet now you want to also mandate and mark their attendance on how to get to school. No, they have to figure that out on their own. Consequences, ladies and gentlemen. College teaches you consequences for your actions. These are the things that I think that we need to be focused on more than anything, ladies and gentlemen. College is an experience. They're going to learn some things. A lot of the time, these students, this is their first time being away from home. And we all know, all of us who've been to college, especially those of us who went away from home, our first semester, for the most part, is a wash. Because we're out from under our parents' rule. We don't have nobody telling us when we can come and when we can go. We're out late at night. We're doing all kinds of crazy things. It is the first semester college experience. We've all been there. But most students learn from that. So if they don't do good that first semester, they learn from that. And most of the time, they adjust pretty quickly without somebody managing them and mandating them and telling them, you know, you're missing this many classes. That's what they have to learn, because eventually the grades will fail, the parents will see it, and they may stop paying for it, or they'll lose their scholarship. They'll learn the lesson, ladies and gentlemen. They'll learn the lesson. But let's not put that on the teachers. If we're going to teach our students and our young people how to be ready for corporate America, then teach them and let them feel the consequences if they don't come to class or if they're not coming to class on time. Simple. That's how they learn the lesson. Nobody monitored me going back and forth to school, going to class. I went. If I was late, I had to deal with it. If I missed a class, I had to deal with it. That's what they have to learn, ladies and gentlemen. So while I admire and I respect what he's doing to a point, I don't want to do it, and I don't want to say it, and I don't want it to be phrased as the fact that, you know, doing these things will make you successful in the real world, because that's not necessarily true. You know, most times people will look at you differently when you're dressed what they consider to be appropriately, but not all the time. Not all the time, ladies and gentlemen. You know, we say clothes make the man. That's not necessarily a true statement, ladies and gentlemen. I know a lot of successful men and women from all races who do not dress the way the corporate America says they have, but they have made huge strides and been very successful because they walked that path their way. Understand something, most millionaires, ladies and gentlemen, do not dress up in suit and tie. They do not. So let's be careful. I know I don't want us to put undue burden on a young African American or minority students. I don't want it to do that to them, especially freshmen. Especially freshmen. You're a junior or you're a senior. Okay, I get it. Because you're really getting ready to go into the adult world. You're a senior. Yes, there are some things that we need to be mindful of. Some things, you need to start dressing differently now because you are a senior. You don't know who's going to be on that campus that you might meet that can help you, when you get out into the real world. So yes, your dress should be different at that stage of your college experience. I think it should. But it doesn't necessarily mean that there has to be suit in the mood at all. A nice shirt, a clean shirt, and a pair of pants, it goes a long way, ladies and gentlemen. But let's just stop mandating and saying that it has to be this way because that's the way the world sees it and that'll guarantee success, because it will not. And that's not what he said, but in reading it, that's what's implied. And that's where I'm concerned at. Let our young people be young. Let them do some of the crazy things that we did when we were young. In the 70s, dashikis, afros, all those things, black power, all those things were going on college campuses. And a lot of people did not like them then. They thought it was inappropriate. The people, it wasn't a good representation of the students, But under the black campuses, we didn't have that problem. And it did not prove to be true that just because people stood up and they wore their shikis, that they weren't intelligent. Because a young man or a young woman has dreads in their hair, does not mean they're not intelligent. It does not mean that they're not ready for corporate America based upon their hairstyle. That's crazy. Or based upon the type of clothes that they wear. It's crazy. If that's what they're going to be judged at when they go out into the world, if that's going to be the primary facet of their judgment, then we haven't really gone as far as we think we have. Once again, just to give it balance, yes, I do think a professional look at some points is definitely necessary. I think that when we go into certain situations, we need to know how to dress. But we're on college campus, ladies and gentlemen. We're in college. We ain't got a lot of money. We ain't got a lot of clothes. Okay? We don't. Let them express themselves. So you said not in all places, okay, fine, I'm willing to go. But I'm sitting in the lunchroom with my do-rag on, or if I'm a young woman, I got a scarf around my head. Really? Is that the stand you want to take? Is that the flag you want to die on? That's all I'm saying. Be careful of the message that we're sending to them, especially in the schools like Tuskegee University, okay? Because we got a culture, although it's predominantly black culture, we have people coming from all different types of environments, from all different types, walks of life. And while some people are raised this way, some people are raised that way, they all trying to mesh together. Be careful. Just be careful. Okay, because what happens, ladies and gentlemen, when we start putting these mandates out and everybody can't afford to keep up to that style, now the judgment comes amongst the students. Because now people think they're better than anybody else. So it happens, whether we want to own up to it or not. So all I'm saying, I respect what he's saying. I understand what he's saying. I think it was a better way to address it. That's all I'm going to say. I think it was a better way to address it. I think we need to be mindful. I think conversation is a better approach when we're going to make this type of change. To all the college students that are out there, you get ready to go to college, this is your first semester, you're getting clothes to go, have your parents buy you a suit, at least one suit, a couple of pairs of dress pants that you can switch it up with, a couple of ties, a couple of white shirts, just so you have them for them situations, okay? They should be a staple in your wardrobe. They should be. Your wardrobe should not consist only of sneakers and jeans. But for most days, that is appropriate attire for college campus. So listen, my name is Tom Waters. Thank you for joining me for another episode of Let's Talk About It, and I'll see you again soon.